Welcome to the future of payroll and workforce management insights by HR.com, your go-to resource for insights into payroll and workforce management. From navigating compliance and technology trends to exploring the latest in global payroll solutions, we're here to keep you ahead of the curve. Join us as we dive into the forces reshaping payroll and share practical strategies to optimize your workforce management. Let's get started.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Future of Payroll and Workforce Management, a podcast here at HR.com, where I'm your host. My name is Brent Skinner, and we are recording this episode from the exhibitor/marketplace floor of PrismHR Live, which is in Aurora/Denver, Colorado. I think we're in Aurora. Yeah. And this is the Gaylord, a beautiful, beautiful resort. I'm very impressed. And with me today, I have Adam Van Beek, who is Chief Innovation Officer of PrismHR. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I'm so glad you agreed to do this episode. And we're going to talk about AI governance and how the Chief Innovation Officer has influence over that, what it means, what's going on when it comes to HRIS and things like that these days. But first, as I like to ask all my guests, because there's a lot of great stories, how people got into this industry, whether it's HCM or the PEO space. Maybe you can walk us through that and maybe a little bit around, what was your path to becoming a Chief Innovation Officer, Adam?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, sure. Yeah. So I won't go too far back. We don't have that much time, but, I'll start back, prior to coming here at PrismHR, I was at IBM for 10 years and I spent a lot of time in the field working with a lot of clients, partners as well, basically implementing IBM technology. So I learned a lot about, data governance, data lineage. We did a lot of data warehouses, very large scale warehouses for some of the large insurance carriers, some of the, the bigger financials. And I also worked a lot with partners, right? So implementing resellable, more of like a VAR. So they played the VAR role, and they would resell IBM software, build solutions on top of the IBM software. So I really enjoyed that because you could see the partners grow and you could work with them, and they would always ask questions like, "Hey, here's a challenge that we have, whether it's performance, security, whatever it may be," and we would have to come up with the solution together. So it was always something I enjoyed doing. It got me out of bed in the morning and was always excited, I did have one of these partners that would ask, "Hey, are you interested in coming on board?" A couple of times. And I said, "Well, thank you, but, not sure if I'm interested or not." But then I realized, hey, I've been at IBM. I hit the 10-year mark and I was looking for something different. So I went back to that partner. It was Fred Davison was the original founder.
Okay.
And, he said, "Hey, we're looking to grow, update the technology. There's a lot going on. We think we really have something here, as a business and organization." So he explained the way the industry worked, and I still didn't understand the industry after he explained it, because it's an interesting industry. So, but I was intrigued, and I thought, this is a great opportunity. So, I started working for, at the time it was FW Davison before we became PrismHR. And I learned a ton, and it was interesting. We were a small company. We were 20 employees. And so, at first I thought, "Oh man, what did I do?" And then I realized, okay, I'm here to change all that. So, learned a lot about the clients. I learned a lot about the industry. And I realized there was lots of opportunity for improvement. And I realized that our clients were growing, right? And they're constantly asking for help, bringing on new industries, or, getting into new industries, bringing on new clients, challenges with compliance. So I quickly realized there's just so much complexity. And so again, I see that as opportunities for us.
Yeah.
So I was pretty excited about that. And then I, was able to take a lot of my knowledge from working, database, large databases, drawing lineage, governance, compliance, policies, working with some of the bigger guys, and help kind of bring that to the smaller. And, and then we started to grow. we've evolved tremendously over that time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You have, and it's been a really impressive conference. And I wanted to just point something out here. I feel a lot better now because now I know that you were having trouble understanding the industry when you first got here as well. So I feel better about not understanding a bunch of stuff yesterday at some of the innovation lab stuff. And by the way, we have our PR handlers behind the camera here, and they were a witness to that. But in any event,
Can I add one thing?
yeah, sure.
I do have to say, I've been in this industry for 13 years now, and even people within Prism HR and clients think that we know everything sometimes,
Yeah.
and we don't. So I am learning every day. I learn more, and again, it's whether it's a compliance change or something our clients have to, build or evolve or handle all that complexity for their clients. It's it's a lot of fun. And and one thing I do when we hire like new developers, for example, I said, well, hey, what we do is payroll and HR, benefits, onboarding. So it might not sound that interesting, but the problems that we solve for our clients is really rewarding. So when you see them, you're like, oh, yes, this is huge. And, we can sleep at night now. This is going to take a tremendous load off the team, or it's going to make our clients happy. So that's what's really exciting about this.
And you say able to sleep at night, and we're not joking because we're talking about payroll. We're talking about capturing people's time correctly and all this kind of stuff. This is fundamental. So before we get to the AI governance thing of which I want to talk about, because there's a lot of interesting things going on. I think that I'm learning that the Chief Innovation Officer can have a lot of impact on this, but maybe you can just clue us in a little bit more. What exactly is it that falls under the Chief Innovation Officer's purview? Like what are you leading in the organization?
Sure. So I kind of blend between the development side and the product side. And I also work with operations. So I work with all the teams.
Okay.
And, we bring solutions to market. Like, so, we're there, we have our normal, our development teams that are working on solutions. That's just a constant flow into the product. But a lot of times there's new challenges, new solutions, whether it's, new technologies that we're evaluating. Maybe it's AI, building a new AI solution. How do we improve processes? How do we scale the platform? I'll use report center as a great example. We need a new infrastructure. We need to offload a lot of reporting and analytics. And, we did a new solution to straighten that data out. So these are things that, that we work with all the other teams to come up with solutions. It's kind of like also working with the architecture team as well. So,
yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So, okay. So there's within the organization, in terms of, so Prism HR has its AI sort of ethos, right, when it comes to your customers, but also within your own organization, there's a lot of tools being used and this sort of thing. And that with that comes some complexity, and it really challenges sort of the conventional models of you must have your own HRIS, right? That you want to keep that information in, and a lot of it's just not making its way in. So what kind of an impact or influence over this scenario within Prism HR itself, your organization? How do you deal with that?
So this is a very interesting question, a great question. So, that this is a challenge that we have that evolves every month, every day. There's challenges with our process just to keep up with the pace of, that we can develop now, write code. We're not, a lot of us are not writing code anymore, line by line anymore. That's, where AI is building, writing code, great code. So we're playing a different role. We're spending a lot of time figuring out, well, how do we inject QA and product management together and move these projects to the finish line, right? Yeah. So, and very quickly. And it's a challenge because, developers are used to saying, okay, hey, we built our project, we're moving on, and QA picks it up, so we build some automation. But we're changing that because we need to, because, like I said, a lot of that work's coming off the developer's plate and they're playing a bit of a different role. So, there's a lot of that going on right now, and we're working on improving that model, and we're testing, different ways of, or different processes, for example. So, as I mentioned, what would happen if we tied a developer and a QA person together? And, it's more like they come to an agreement with proof of, the quality of the testing, for example. And we always want some sort of proof, right? So we need a document full of soft requirements. Okay, it's been tested. Here's the testing. Here's the results, and so forth. Here's our unit test. Here's regression test. We're going to build it in to our process. So the next release, we're not going to have any negative impact as well. So that's a change to the way that we build in our whole software lifecycle. So that's it's challenging, and then that's, believe it or not, us as we scale and we're a much larger organization, those become difficult problems to solve. So we're working on that right now and refining that. As we're able to move super quick, and as we say, we're just blazing through projects, with writing code. But now we need to make sure the whole organization's moving at the same pace.
Last night we talked at the karaoke party. Yes, there was a karaoke party here at PrismHR Live. And you shared with me an example of where you were using AI, and I don't remember what the purpose was, but you were using AI and you decided, well, maybe we should have people do this instead.
Yeah. So, we presented our new payroll audit dashboard. And so this was a project that came out of basically a kickoff we had months ago, which we said, hey, we wanted to accelerate a bunch of AI projects and just see what kind of ideas we could come up with when we peer together with product and developers, and just, it's kind of like just tinkering, and some stuff works, some stuff we threw out. So one of the very interesting projects that came out of this was this payroll audit, where basically we bring all kinds of data together to help like a payroll operator, a payroll manager understand, what's going on with payroll, right? So that was the focus, is, how can we solve that problem? And so we started out and we built it with AI. We said, hey, this is great. So now we had, we actually plugged it into Claude. So Claude was actually summarizing and presenting the data back to us. And, we were like, this is awesome. This is great. We love it. And then we said, well, maybe we could actually do this without Claude, some of it. So then we kind of scaled it back and rewrote it again. And then we said, well, hey, let's ask AI if we can even write more of it, so we can actually write more of the code, less actual AI, because our costs start to get very high, right? So we start to look at what it's going to cost our clients to use this, and we want to make sure we're very conscious of that. So we scaled it back, and we ended up rewriting it, I don't know, 5 or 6 times, and we can do it very quickly now. So, and basically we came up with this new report, which was, now it's 99% driven by code, which was AI written. However, written by AI, but however, we can then summarize it, if you want, with AI. So, again, it started 100% AI, and then was just kind of evolved over time. And that's what we're finding, is a lot of these projects are iterative projects where you start, with an idea, and you just kind of rebuild, and reorganize, rethink. And I think that our clients are going to, they're looking at it now, and they're having some feedback. So we're like, oh, that's great. Yeah, we'll do that. So, we're going to continue to evolve that project, as we go, and very quickly. So that's, it's exciting.
That is exciting. And that's interesting too, because you hear so much about the AI, the use of the implementation of AI being sort of a force multiplier when it comes to automation and just lowering costs, administrative, newfound efficiencies in administration, this kind of stuff, right? But in that example, I'm hearing that the cost of AI was of using the AI was a sort of prohibitive or a counterbalancing factor. And it actually led your team to decide, let's have the humans the people do this. Do you think that we're going to run into more of that in business where it's, there's this big promise of, of all these vast sea change sort of efficiencies, and yet, everybody knows you run up against your tokens and Claude or whatever, and you're spending a lot of money. What's going to happen there?
Great question. And this is something we ask, every project that we're working on now is, what is it going to cost? And as you're participating in the conference, you probably heard it a lot. The question came up, what is this going to cost? And the answer is we're not sure yet, so, and we work with Microsoft and we work with Anthropic, and they're not sure yet either. The pricing models, I'm sure, keep changing. So where this ends, we don't know exactly, but what we do know is that we need to continue to refine everything that we build and deliver and understand what's the cost. And so there's a couple ways that we do that. In that last example, we used AI to rebuild it and write the code to actually generate the report for us. And, it did a great job for doing it. And we just asked, it was funny. We actually asked, said, hey, how do we lower the cost?
Yeah.
So, great, let's take a look at it. So it was a discussion between the developers, and, AI and that allowed us to then lower that cost down to, almost nothing. So that was a great example. One other example we're looking at is, we're finding that to build the code and write the code and do the research require the bigger, deeper thinking models. However, evaluating a report or summarizing, some text, parsing, timesheet imports, things like that, don't require that deep thinking model. So we can use models that are much lower cost and much more efficient. And we actually get better performance out of that as well. So that'll be a big change and something we test.
That's really interesting. It's exciting to think about where this is going, and some of the predictions we're seeing right now, I think they're playing out a little bit differently than people thought. And I'm sure we could talk about this all day. We've reached the end of the podcast episode. It's been great having you on the podcast, Adam. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Workforce Management and Payroll Insights by HR.com. We hope today's episode brought you valuable insights and fresh perspectives on the future of payroll and workforce management. Be sure to check out more episodes and explore resources at HR.com/podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep innovating and making a difference in the world of payroll and workforce management.